All right, everybody, welcome back to Talk Tickers. So you're prepping for this big investment meeting on Dynavax Technologies. DVX, that's right. And you need all the need-to-know highlights from their latest earnings call.
Well, you've come to the right place.
This company's got a really interesting story. They're already dominating the hepatitis B vaccine market with their flagship product, Heplisav-B.
But they've also got this super promising shingles vaccine in development that could really be a game changer.
Yeah, so let's break down this Q4 2024 earnings call and see what we can learn.
What jumps out right away is just how well DVX is performing across the board, hitting record revenues, showing strong profitability, and they've got a pipeline that has investors excited.
Okay, so let's get into the specifics, starting with their blockbuster Hep B vaccine, Heplisav-B. Some pretty incredible numbers here, $71 million in revenue for Q4 alone, and a total of $268 million for the full year.
That's a 39% and 26% jump, respectively.
Yeah, which is pretty remarkable growth in any market.
And what's even more impressive is that they're now the market leader for adult Hep B vaccines in the U.S. with a 44% market share.
Wow, so let's connect this to the bigger picture. What's really driving this success?
I think a big part of it is their laser focus on retail pharmacies and what are called integrated delivery networks, or IDNs.
IDNs?
Yeah, basically these are large healthcare systems that deliver a full spectrum of care.
Okay.
DVX has really strategically targeted these as key distribution channels for adult vaccines, and it's clearly paying off with a 25% annual growth in doses administered through these channels.
So it's not just about having a great product, it's about getting that product into the hands of the people who need it.
Exactly.
And DVX has nailed that.
Absolutely. And here's where it gets even more interesting. There are two big developments happening in 2025 that are likely to boost DVX's growth even further.
Okay, I'm listening.
First, Medicare patients now have access to Hep B vaccines at retail pharmacies, which significantly expands their potential customer base.
Makes sense.
And second, adult Hep B vaccination is now included in HEDIS.
HEDIS. Now that rings a bell, but can you remind me why that's so important?
Sure. HEDIS stands for Healthcare Effectiveness Data and Information Set. It's essentially a set of performance measures used by health plans and employers to assess the quality and efficiency of healthcare providers.
Okay.
And now that adult Hep B vaccination is part of that, IDNs are going to be really motivated to make sure their patients are vaccinated.
So this HEDIS development is essentially a tailwind pushing even more business DVX's way.
Exactly.
Okay, so what does all this mean for their future growth projections?
They're forecasting that the U.S. Hep B vaccine market could be worth over $900 million by 2030, and they're aiming for at least a 60% market share.
Wow.
If they hit that, we're talking double-digit annual sales growth for Heplisav-B for the foreseeable future.
Okay, so we've established that DVAX is crushing it in the Hep B market, but they're not a one-trick pony, right? Let's talk about their shingles vaccine, Z1018, which is still in development but generating a lot of buzz.
Right.
This is where they're aiming to compete with Shingrix, which is the current dominant player.
What's interesting here is that DVAX isn't just trying to create a Me Too drug. They're going for a vaccine that's just as effective as Shingrix, but with a much better safety profile.
That makes a lot of sense.
Shingrix is known to have some pretty rough side effects, so DVAX is betting that a more tolerable vaccine will be a big selling point.
Yeah, who wants to feel awful after getting a vaccine?
Exactly. And they already have some promising data from a phase 1 study showing that Z1018 generated similar antibody and T-cell responses to Shingrix, meaning it's just as effective at triggering an immune response.
Okay.
But here's the key takeaway. The rate of side effects was significantly lower with Z1018.
That's huge. So not only is it effective, but it's also potentially much easier to tolerate.
Right.
What's the timeline looking like for this vaccine?
Well, the big news to watch for is the phase 12 trial results, which are expected in Q3 of 2025. This will tell us the optimal dose and regimen for the vaccine and will be a key indicator of its potential for success. They're also running a phase 2 extension study focusing on patients over 70, which will provide even more safety data.
So it sounds like 2025 is going to be a make or break year for DVX and their shingles vaccine.
It could be.
But before we get too far ahead of ourselves, let's talk about the company's financial health.
All right.
One of the most impressive things is that DVAX achieved their goal of full-year profitability in 2024. They reported $27 million in net income, which is a strong signal of their financial stability.
Yeah, that's a big deal. It shows they're maturing as a company.
And what about their profitability on an operational level? How about that whole EBITDA thing that investors always talk about?
Well, their adjusted EBITDA, which excludes stock-based compensation, came in at a solid $52 million.
Okay.
This suggests that their core business is generating strong cash flow, which is a good sign for their long-term prospects.
Okay, so they're making money, their lead product is selling like crazy, and they have a potentially groundbreaking shingles vaccine in the pipeline. What's not to love? But hold on. How much cash do they actually have on hand, especially after spending $100 million on share buybacks?
They ended the year with a very healthy $714 million in cash.
Oh, wow, that's a lot of financial firepower. So what are they planning to do with all that cash? Are they just going to sit on it?
Not at all. They've already authorized up to $200 million for share buybacks, and they're actively looking for external development opportunities.
Interesting. What does that tell you?
It tells me they're thinking strategically about how to use their expertise and resources to grow the business even further.
Sounds like they're in a strong position to invest in their own research and development or potentially make some strategic acquisitions.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what moves they make in the coming months.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here. DVX is dominating the Hep B market. Their shingles vaccine is looking very promising, and their financial position is rock solid. But now it's time for everyone's favorite segment, the one where we let loose a little and have some fun. It's time for This Is Not Financial Advice.
All right, let's throw out a completely outrageous but somehow plausible trade idea. Just for entertainment purposes, of course.
Exactly. So considering everything we've discussed about DVAX, what's a wild but potentially lucrative play here?
Okay, here's a thought. We know DVX's shingles vaccine data is going to be the big catalyst this year. Positive results could send their valuation through the roof.
Right.
So how about this? You buy DVX, but here's the twist. You short GSK, the maker of Shingrix, as a hedge.
Ooh, okay.
If DVX's vaccine lives up to the hype, GSK's dominance could be challenged and their stock could take a hit.
Now that's a bold move. But if DVX really does dethrone Shingrix, that trade could pay off big time.
Exactly. High risk, high reward. But of course, this is just a thought experiment and absolutely positively not financial advice.
Right. And as always, we must emphasize this is not financial advice.
Absolutely. Do your own research. Consult a professional and never invest more than you can afford to lose.
Well, folks, there you have it. DVX is a company on the move, and we've given you the rundown, the insights, and even a crazy trade idea to ponder.
Definitely one to watch.
But the deep dive doesn't end here. Stay tuned for part 2, where we'll explore even more about this fascinating company and what their future might hold.
You know, it's easy to get caught up in all the numbers and the financial analysis.
Yeah.
But we should remember that DVAX is also making a real impact on public health.
That's a great point.
I mean, their Hep B vaccine is already helping to prevent a serious and potentially life-threatening disease.
Right, and with their shingles vaccine,
Yeah.
they could potentially reduce a lot of pain and suffering.
Shingles can be absolutely brutal.
Oh yeah, especially for older adults.
It's not just the physical pain either. It can also lead to long-term complications like postherpetic neuralgia,
Right.
which is this chronic nerve pain that can last for months or even years.
So a vaccine that can prevent or reduce the severity of shingles
Yeah,
would be a huge win for public health.
absolutely.
And speaking of wins, I've got to give DVAC props for achieving profitability in 2024.
That's a huge milestone for any company,
Yeah.
especially a biotech company that's investing so much in research and development.
What's interesting is that it shows how sustainable their business model really is.
Right.
They're generating enough revenue from Heplisav-B to fund their pipeline and even return capital to shareholders.
That's a great position to be in.
And it gives them so much flexibility.
Yeah.
They can keep investing in their own R&D
Right.
or look to acquire other companies or assets to add to their portfolio.
We know they're actively looking for those external development opportunities.
Yeah.
So it'll be interesting to see what they go after.
Maybe they'll go for another vaccine company, or maybe they'll expand into a completely different therapeutic area.
Lots of possibilities.
Yeah, it's pretty exciting.
Oh.
Okay, so we talked about all the good stuff. Right. But every investment has risks.
Right.
What are some things that could go wrong for DVX? What should investors be thinking about going into that meeting?
Well, like with any biotech company, there's always the risk that their pipeline candidates could fail in clinical trials.
Yeah, That's just part of the game.
And even if their shingles vaccine is successful, there's no guarantee that it'll be a commercial success.
Right.
They'll be up against Shingrix, which is already a very popular
It's a
product.
good competition.
But I think DVX has a real chance to stand out with a more tolerable vaccine.
Yeah, if it's just as effective as Shingrix, but with fewer side effects,
Right.
I think a lot of people would choose that.
Absolutely. Another thing to consider is manufacturing risk.
Okay.
They're currently relying on one manufacturing facility for Heplisav-B.
So if there were any problems there.
Right, it could really disrupt their supply chain.
Okay, so that's a real concern, but are they doing anything about it?
They are. They've been working to set up a second manufacturing site.
Okay, so they're aware of the risk and trying to manage it.
Exactly. Overall, I think DVX is a well-managed company with a solid track record.
Sounds like it.
They've got a great product in Heplisav-B,
Uh-huh.
a promising pipeline,
Right.
and a strong financial position.
Okay, so we've looked really closely at DVX. Let's zoom out for a minute and think about the big picture trends that could impact their future.
Good idea.
It's not enough to just analyze a company on its own.
Right.
We need to consider the forces shaping the whole industry.
One of the biggest trends is the growing demand for adult vaccines.
Oh, yeah.
For a long time, the focus was mainly on childhood vaccinations, but now we're seeing a shift towards recognizing the importance of protecting adults, too.
That makes sense.
Oh, great.
Adults are living longer, and as we age, we
Right.
become more vulnerable to certain diseases like shingles,
Yeah.
pneumonia,
Yeah.
and, of course, hepatitis B.
Exactly. And there are a few things driving this trend.
Okay, like what?
Well, an aging population,
Makes sense.
rising healthcare costs, and a greater emphasis on preventative care.
So DVAX is well positioned to take advantage of this trend with their adult Hep B vaccine.
Absolutely.
And their shingles vaccine, if it works out, could be a big player in that market too.
They're definitely in the right place at the right time with the right products.
But there are also challenges on the horizon.
Oh, yeah.
The vaccine market is getting more competitive.
With more and more companies vying for market share.
So how can DVAX stay ahead of the game?
Well, competition can actually be a good thing.
How so?
It can push innovation and force companies to really up their game.
Okay.
DVX already has a strong track record of innovation. They were the first to develop an adult Hep B vaccine using a special adjuvant.
Oh, yeah, to boost the immune response.
Right, and they're continuing to invest heavily in R&D to develop new and improved vaccines.
So they're not just sitting back and relaxing.
Definitely not.
They're always looking for ways to improve their products and expand their offerings.
Exactly, which is really important for any company that wants to stay successful in the long run.
So what other opportunities are out there for DVX? I mean, they're already doing great in the Hep B market, and their shingles vaccine looks promising. Where else can they go from here?
There's still plenty of room for growth in the U.S. for Heplisav-B,
Yeah.
especially with those recent changes to Medicare Part B reimbursement and the inclusion of adult Hep B vaccination in HEDIS.
Yeah, we talked about how those are like huge tailwinds.
Exactly. And they've also mentioned plans to expand internationally,
Oh, yeah.
which could open up a whole new world of opportunity.
So on top of vaccines, DVX is also looking to use its adjuvant technology platform to develop new treatments for other diseases.
Right. They're exploring its use in cancer, immunotherapy, and other areas.
Wow, so they're really thinking big.
Absolutely. They're aiming to become a major player in the global healthcare market.
But as we said earlier, every opportunity comes with challenges.
For sure.
They'll need to be smart about navigating regulations, managing their resources, and adapting to the ever-changing healthcare industry.
It's a complex landscape.
Yeah, but I think DVX has a lot going for it. They've got strong leadership, a talented team, a solid track record of success, and a pipeline that could really change the way we treat and prevent diseases.
I agree.
But ultimately, their success is going to depend on their ability to execute their strategy, adapt to change, and stay ahead of the curve.
Well said. Okay, so let's leave our listeners with one final thought-provoking question.
Good idea. How about this? We've talked about how DVX could disrupt the shingles market with their new vaccine candidate. But what if they took it a step further and developed a therapeutic treatment for shingles?
Interesting.
Could they leverage their knowledge of the virus and their adjuvant technology to create a drug that could not only prevent shingles, but also treat the painful symptoms?
Now, that would be a game changer for patients suffering from this condition.
And it would open up a whole new market for DVX.
It would indeed. And it just goes to show that in biotech, the possibilities are truly endless.
Well said. We'll pick up right where we left off in part 3. Welcome back to Talk Tickers. We're wrapping up our deep dives into Dynavax Technologies, and in this final part, we're going to shift gears a bit.
Yeah.
We've talked about their financials, their blockbuster Hep B vaccine, and their promising shingles vaccine candidate.
Right.
But now I want to explore their long-term strategy.
Yeah, that's key, especially if you're thinking about DVAX as a long-term investment. What are their plans beyond these current products? Where do they see themselves in the broader healthcare landscape?
Exactly. So let's put on our strategic thinking caps here and consider what challenges and opportunities DVAX might face in the coming years.
One of the biggest challenges, and this is something a lot of investors are thinking about, is competition.
Right.
The vaccine market is getting more and more crowded with new players popping up all the time.
Right. We touched on that earlier, but it's worth repeating. They're going up against some big pharmaceutical companies.
Yeah, especially in the shingles market.
So how can DVAX stay competitive?
Well, competition can actually be a good thing.
Really? How so?
It can drive innovation and force companies to stay on top of their game.
Okay.
And DVAX has a good track record of innovation. Remember, they were the first to develop an adult Hep B vaccine that uses a novel adjuvant.
Right, to boost the immune response.
Exactly. And they're putting a lot of money into R&D to develop new and improved vaccines.
So they're not resting on their laurels.
Not at all.
Yeah.
They're constantly trying to improve their products and expand their portfolio.
Which is essential if you want to stay successful in the long run.
Absolutely. So aside from just innovating, what other opportunities are out there for DVAX? I mean, they're already killing it with the Hep B vaccine, and the shingles vaccine looks really promising. Where else can they go?
Right, like what's next?
Well, there's still a lot of room to grow in the U.S. market for Heplisav-B,
Excellent.
especially with the recent changes to Medicare Part B reimbursement and the inclusion of adult Hep B vaccination in HEDIS.
Right, we talked about those being like huge tailwinds.
Exactly. And they've also mentioned expanding internationally.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Which could open up a whole new world of opportunity.
Okay, so beyond just vaccines, DVAX is also looking at using their adjuvant technology platform
Yeah.
to develop new treatments for other diseases.
Right. They're exploring its use in things like cancer immunotherapy.
So they're really aiming to become a major player in healthcare.
Absolutely. But like you said before, every opportunity comes with challenges.
For sure.
They'll need to navigate regulations, manage their resources, and adapt to the constantly changing healthcare landscape.
It's a tough business.
It is. But I think DVX has a lot going for it. Strong leadership, a talented team, a track record of success, and a pipeline with the potential to really change how we treat and prevent diseases.
Right. Can they actually deliver on their plans?
Well, folks, we've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive. We've gone over DVX's financials, their current products, their pipeline, and their long-term strategy.
We've really dug deep. And now, before we sign off, it's time for our favorite segment. The one where we let our imaginations run wild and come up with a crazy but kind of plausible trade idea.
All right, let's hear it.
But first, the disclaimer. This is just for fun and is absolutely not financial advice.
Of course. Always do your own research.
All right, so we've talked a lot about DVAX Up focusing on vaccines,
Right.
but what if they went in a completely different direction?
Okay, I like where this is going.
What if they acquired a company developing a completely different type of therapy? Something totally outside their current expertise.
Like what? Give me an example.
Imagine this DVX buys a company that's leading the way in gene editing,
Whoa, okay.
specifically CRISPR Therapeutics.
That would be a huge move.
Right, it would give them access to this cutting-edge technology that could revolutionize medicine.
It could treat so many diseases from genetic disorders to cancer.
It would be a game changer for them.
It would give them a foothold in a rapidly growing market.
Exactly. Now, it might seem like a long shot, but remember, DVAX has a history of making big moves.
That's true.
They're not afraid to invest in new technologies and expand into new areas.
And they have the money and the team to make it happen.
It's definitely an interesting idea to think about.
It would be fascinating to see how it played out.
But again, this is all hypothetical. Just a thought experiment.
And definitely not financial advice.
Do your own research, talk to a financial advisor, and never invest more than you can afford to lose.
Words to live by.
That's all for this episode of Talk Tickers. We hope you enjoyed our deep dive into Dynavax Technologies.
It's a fascinating company.
If you want to learn more about DVAX or other biotech companies, be sure to check out our other episodes.
And subscribe to our channel.
Thanks for listening. We'll see you next time on Talk Tickers.